right, welcome again to another episode of 3PN. We are your hosts, Jake and Shain. We appreciate you joining us for this one. I think we're pretty excited for those who aren't, I guess, super nerds like ourselves. It's probably going to be a book-heavy episode. So if you don't like that, I don't know what to tell you. But we're going to get into that here in a little bit, kind of go over what we've been reading, especially the Stormlight Archive series. We're going to get into a little bit of that, so anybody who's interested, stick around for that. Shane, I know it's been about, 2 weeks now since we've done our last recording. What have you been up to? How you doing?
Yeah, no, I'm doing good. I think it was great having Kenny on with us last episode. Hopefully we can get him on a few more. That was like really the first time I've talked to him since high school, so it was pretty neat seeing what he's been up to.
Yeah, it was good. It was definitely a different dynamic with three of us trying to not talk over each other. It was just learning curve. It was interesting.
And I think that was always kind of our vision, was three people. Just the third's been really busy with his own personal life stuff, so it is what it is. But yeah, maybe we can get in on that a little more. As far as what I've been up to, I have been playing the new Dragon's Dogma, which I think we're going to talk about a little later. Huge fan of the game. Let's see. What did I do last weekend? I'm not sure.
It all kind of blends together, you know?
Yeah, well, that's adult life for you. We did something last week. Oh, we went shopping a couple of different times. So for everyone that doesn't know, I got married in Thailand to my wife, but it was just like a traditional Thai ceremony. We didn't sign any documents or anything like that. So legally, we're not married. So last weekend, we bought a bunch of stuff because on the 11th of this month, we are legally getting married through the German courts and everything. And so
That's awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah, we bought some makeup and a bunch of other random stuff.
For you or her?
Oh, me, obviously.
Yeah. Just going to do it up?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm not going to get married looking like this, you know? You're going to be fancy.
Yeah.
But, that's basically been it. Just sort of working and I think we've already talked about it. I'm getting ready to move back to the States, so there's a lot of and with the new family and everything, I've got so much paperwork I got to do because I got my out processing that I got to do. I've had to do all this documentation to process our marriage, and then once we actually get married and get those, I got to get that documented and processed. And then I got to get her put on my orders and get them all visas and stuff so that they can come to the States with me. It's been hectic, and I have to actually work while doing all of this stuff. So it's been crazy.
Sounds like you got your hands full, huh?
Oh yeah, it's been so much fun.
Yeah, honestly, I haven't been. I've just been working. You know what I mean? Working. Lauren, my wife, had some friends down from up north to visit. Mm-hmm. Last few days, so that was nice for her. It's been good. I've been, like you said, I've been playing Dragon's Dogma. I'm addicted to that game. It's a problem. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know last week we played a little bit of Baldur's Gate, started a new campaign there, just me and you again, which I think has been really fun. It's probably been the best playthrough I've had so far.
Our first playthrough where I built the Meat Maestro is kind of a funny joke that didn't stay funny the whole time. And the build, as interesting of a build as it was, really has I think we got it to level 5 or 6, and even up to that point, he just wasn't carrying his weight very well. So, I built a more smart character, and we're having fun with it.
Yeah, it's a good one. You been watching anything?
Man, not really. I've just been watching reruns and stuff like that.
Same
Between prepping for this marriage and moving and everything else, I'm either so tired that I don't want to watch anything new, so I just flip something on that I've already seen and go back to sleep. Or I'll throw a Dragon's Dogma or some other video game on and just totally zonk out.
Yeah.
I will say I've been rewatching Dexter.
That's such a good show, yeah.
It really is. I never watched it when it came out because it came out, I think we were in high school when it came out, and all the girls that were like obsessed with serial killers and stuff, which is, I guess,
strange.
a resurgence of that has happened, but I just didn't want any part of it. I was like, you're all stupid.
Yeah.
And then it was a couple years ago that I actually watched it for the first time. I was like, man, I really missed out. So I'm on a rewatch of that. I think I just got to season 2.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, when we were talking, I think it was last week, or the week prior to last recording, whatever, when Kenny was on, we were talking about watching that new Avatar series, right?
The live
Last
action
Airbender. Yeah, the live action one.
Yeah,
So,
I saw that. It was pretty good. I enjoyed it.
So that was good. I finished that, and then since then, my son just watches like the same episode of like Bluey or Blue's Clues from like over and over and over again. It's like the same thing. He wants to watch monster trucks on Blippi or something, and so instead I threw on the last Airbender, the Nickelodeon one, the original one on because it's on Netflix now, and we've been watching that, and he's like totally got into it. We're almost through season 1 now, and we're just because my wife works nights a couple days of the week, so when we're just like hanging out, not that I let him watch TV all the time, but at the end of the day when we're trying to wind down, I'll throw that on, watch a few the short episodes, so that's been pretty fun.
Man, when I was visiting you, him and I watched TV all day long, so
yeah, we're trying to get away from the whole screen time thing. Obviously it's not I think any parent knows it's I don't know. It's hard.
Who says that screen time is bad? A bunch of nerds with college degrees? Screw those guys. They don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah, probably.
There's a lot of valuable lessons to be watched in Game of Thrones, all right?
I agree with you. All right. I definitely agree.
Or House of the Dragon. It was House of the Dragon we were watching.
Yeah, I think that's what you want.
Not as many boobs as Game of Thrones. But
yeah, with
still
my
good.
1-year-old. Oh, that's good.
He's too
But yeah,
young
let's
to remember.
get
It's
into
all
Dragon's Dogma real quick. We'll talk about that before we get into any of the things that popped up in the news last couple weeks. So I heard this is not a quote from me. I can't even remember where I read it or what it was from, but I read something. It was a comment on one of the pages that I follow, and they were talking about Dragon's Dogma, and they were saying that this game gives them the feeling that they've been looking for since playing Skyrim when that first came out. Mm-hmm. And I never really got into Skyrim but I remember you did a lot, and it hits a lot of the same notes, but does a lot of things so much better. I think adding the pawns is what they call it, was basically your like slaves, kind of like they just they like just worship you in a weird way, which I can't really figure that out yet. But
have you gotten one that's caught the dragon plague yet?
No.
Well, buckle up, Sugar Cup.
Oh, great. Now, I have heard, like, some of them will come out of the rift or whatever, and they'll talk about, like, there's a
like, hey,
sickness.
have you heard this rumor? Yeah, that's what they're talking about. It's a real thing.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
So I have that to look for. But that is I'm having such a fun time with that, and even though it's just single player, you don't have a lot of multiplayer, which I enjoy more multiplayer games, but I'm having a great time with this. How about you?
I think, when I didn't hear that quote that you said, but once you said it, I 100% agreed with it. So Skyrim, I think, is an amazing game. I think it was really good when it came out. I don't know if it's necessarily aged that well, but
Definitely
I still find myself going back and playing it all the time. I know, like, I played it when it first came out, so I still have that nostalgic attachment.
Yeah.
Whereas I don't think you ever really played it. You think you tried playing it?
I tried it
ago or something.
Yeah, because it went on sale for like $7 or something, or whatever it was. So I downloaded it and I tried it. And I was like, I just can't. After playing Baldur's Gate, it's hard to play any RPG, to be honest.
Yeah, I think the problem with Skyrim, from out the gate, it's a game that's all about dragons, and then when you finally actually fight a dragon for the first time, it's one of the most boring battles you'll ever be a part of. Half the time it's in the air, and when it's not in the air, you just run up and beat on it a couple of times, and then it's dead. And there's a cool scene where you absorb its soul and everything, but like, that is exactly how every dragon fight goes for the rest of the game. Even like the final boss, Alduin, or however you pronounce it, it's the same fight. It's a little bit different. He's got a couple more tricks, but essentially he flies around a bunch. And if you're good enough with a bow, you can hit him while he's flying. But if not, you just run around until he lands, and then you beat on him a bunch, and then, like, it's not even a hard battle. The boss of the game is only slightly stronger than, like, all of the other dragons that you face. So it made the game sort of lackluster, right? And even other enemies, like, you can crank up the difficulty, but really, all the difficulty does is give the bad guys more health and hit harder. So if you don't find better gear, you're screwed. Like, there's not a whole... Yeah. There's a little bit of tactics that go into it, but not a lot. Whereas with Dragon's Dogma, like, every battle can kill you if you're not smart. Yeah. It's not as difficult as, like, a Souls-like game. I've yet to beat a single Souls-like. They're too hard for me. I suck.
Same.
Yeah, but it's like a happy medium between, like, what Skyrim is and what, like, a Souls-like is. I don't want to say that. It's not like a Souls-like at all. But it's like
it is pretty. It's like a Souls-like in the fact that, like, there isn't a difficulty.
No,
setting.
Well,
it is a difficult game.
What it has is, you have to be smart in what abilities you choose,
yep.
and
how you rearrange
and how
your
you
party.
Use those abilities. Yeah, how you organize your party. But honestly, as long as you got one damage dealer and a healer, the rest of the party is just, in my opinion, or in my experience, the rest of the party doesn't matter as much. As long as you got one person to heal and one person to do damage. Everyone else is just distractions, so you're not always being targeted.
Yeah, it's a good one. I'm really enjoying myself with this game. It kind of, it has that game and Baldur's Gate. Are really, I mean, there's obviously some crossover things there, but I don't know. The RPGs in general right now just seem to be doing it right.
They both hit a slightly different scratch that most games nowadays have not really gotten to.
Yeah, no, I agree. All right, I have the next one I had was Star Wars news. I don't know if it's really news. It's just a new trailer got released for Tales of the Empire. Did you see that yet?
I didn't.
Oh, you didn't see this?
IGN stuff, isn't it?
I don't know where I saw this. No, this is Disney Plus posted this, and I watched it. I watched the trailer on Disney Plus, or on YouTube, but whatever. Disney released it. It's so you watched the Tales of the Jedi, right? The animated little shorts.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the Tales of the Empire. It's the other side. So it's like all like Sith stories and shit like that. So they basically said it's just going to be the original shorts, sort of like Tales of the Jedi, but Tales of the Empire, and
it's got a bunch of different writers and producers all just make their own.
Yeah. I believe it's kind of the same setup that they had the Tales of the Jedi.
Yeah.
And you do see Thrawn is in it, General Grievous is in it, Darth Vader, and you see a bunch of characters that I'm not too familiar with, or maybe they're new characters. I don't really know, but it just looks like it's going to be really cool. Yeah, you definitely got to watch it and let me know what you think. Yeah. So when we're done here, that's your homework. You got to watch it.
Maybe you could have told me to watch it before we started recording.
Honestly, you're wearing a Star Wars shirt right now. I figured that you'd been ahead of me on this.
Listen, it doesn't mean that I psychically know all things Star Wars coming out. Although, I did remember we talked last episode in the trailer for the new main series that's coming out that takes place in the High Republic. It's somebody that is the same species as Plo Koon is in that trailer. So it could be Plo Koon or just someone from the same species, but Plo Koon's pretty cool. There's a lot of Star Wars nerds out there that he's like their favorite character just because he can do Force Judgment, which is the Jedi version of lightning, and he is one of the only Jedi to beat Yoda in a lightsaber duel. So he's a pretty cool character.
Okay, cool.
It'd be interesting if he's in.
Seems like there's a lot of interesting Star Wars stuff coming out. I'm hesitantly optimistic, I guess.
Yeah,
Now,
I mean,
they kind of knocked it out of the park with Tales of the Jedi, though, so I imagine Tales of the Empire is going to be pretty good. But I actually have another Star Wars thing here to get to in a second. But.
yeah. The thing with Star Wars right now, with it being in Disney's hands, is that like it's all hit or miss, and really it's hit when Disney lets individual writers do their own thing, and it's miss whenever Kathleen Kennedy gets her dirty, nasty, ugly claws into it. So
I think at this point we all know how you feel about her.
I think she's great.
Yeah. All right, well, I'll just keep with the theme then. I'll skip one. I'll come back to it. April 9th, which is this coming week, we get a new story trailer for the new Star Wars Outlaws video game, the open world kind of RPG.
Oh, yeah,
whatever.
I'm excited for that game. I haven't heard a whole lot about it. I'm excited to see.
It takes place between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi.
Okay.
So I'm super interested to see what they do with this, especially it being like an open world RPG type. This could be exactly what Star Wars players have been waiting for. We haven't really had one specifically open world that I can think of. I mean, I guess that it's not really even an open world. What was those last?
Fallen
Jedi
Order.
Survive. Yeah, Fallen Order, and yeah. I guess those were kind of open world, but it just it had a different feel to it. Like it was, there's only so much you can do, right?
Yeah.
But that'll be good.
I played both those games. They're pretty fun. I'm really excited for this new one coming out. It's really that show they did. What was the one where it just showed the rebellion and no one was it Rebels, where it just showed the rebellion, not Rebels. Rebels animated. It just showed the rebellion, but none of the Jedi. Like it didn't have the Force in it. It came out like early last year, something like that.
Andor?
Yeah. That was cool as a show, but if I'm going to play a Star Wars video game and you don't give me Jedi and or Sith powers, I'm going to be upset.
Well, this video game, I believe you are not playing as a Jedi.
I know you play as a smuggler.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean you don't unlock, Force potential.
Well, don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure that's already been confirmed that is not going to be something for the main character, but I don't 100% know that.
I'd be... So, maybe this is my own personal, bias, but I've always wanted to play, the quasi-space bandit, Han Solo, but if Han Solo discovered that he also had Force powers.
Yeah, that'd be pretty sweet. And maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Like
a little force-wielding pirate type deal is kind of what I'm going at.
That would be pretty sweet.
That'd be a super cool video game where you sort of, you're not trained by the Sith or the Jedi. You just are who you are, and you're figuring it out. Maybe find someone that can, unlock some of your powers, right? Like a mentor or a teacher. But at the end of the day, you are not a Jedi or a Sith.
Kind of like a Sabine-like character, almost.
Kinda.
In the fact that, she doesn't really have a lot of Force powers, but she can unlock it with, with training from Ahsoka and all that.
Yeah, kinda. But I really want to,
You want to be a space pirate.
Yeah. Think... I don't know of a good way to describe it, honestly. Just if Han Solo had Force powers, if he just discovered through something or another that he could wield the Force, and he, keeps doing his smuggling stuff, but also starts blasting people with Force push, or maybe throwing his lightsaber at people or stuff. I don't know. I want a Star Wars game where I'm not stuck to the Sith or the Jedi. I want to be able to do my own thing and still wield the Force.
It'd be cool if they had a Star Wars game that was kind of like Fable, where you had that evil or light you could, depending on your actions.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
KOTOR's kind of like that, but it's old.
Yeah, it's old.
Yeah, KOTOR is definitely, like, there is an alignment scale, and depending on what you do and how much you influence your crewmates, they'll all change as well.
Yeah. All right, last thing I got for just stuff in the news. I guess there was a interview with that Jerry Bruckheimer, I think is what his name is, the guy who did Pirates of the Caribbean, and they are doing a full reboot.
Yeah, I heard about that. Without Johnny Depp.
Without, yeah, which I'm super disappointed about. I don't know.
Well, Johnny Depp said that he refuses to do any more Pirates of the Caribbean because when they dropped him with the whole Amber Heard thing.
Yep. Now, the only reason I brought that up is because me and my wife had we just binge watched like all the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. I think it was a week and a half ago. And we're just really excited, you know what I mean? We love those movies. And I remember growing up as a kid, those were some of the first movies I went and saw. Not the first movies, I should say, but some of the better movies I went and saw with my dad, like in theaters and some friends and whatever. It was just, they're a good series. And I don't know, I'm obviously very skeptical on how they're going to proceed with a complete reboot. And how do you have Pirates of the Caribbean without Captain Jack Sparrow? I don't know how that is going to be a successful franchise after that.
Well, I mean, they're still going to have Captain Jack Sparrow. It's just not going to be Johnny Depp.
Well, I don't think so. I think what he said in the interview was that they are going to have new characters and different... I don't even know. Because Captain Jack Sparrow is like a creation of this movie, of the movie franchise. Pirates of the Caribbean is based off of a Disney ride.
Yeah.
Right? There's not a book to go off of. He isn't like a... there is no lore to...
Yeah.
Because
Jack Sparrow wasn't even a part of the Disney ride until after the movies came out and they added him to the ride.
Yeah, he was a total creation. So when I was reading the article anyway, it was basically insinuated that would not be a character anymore. It was a total reboot, different story, different characters type of deal, which is probably the right way to do it. Although I still don't think it'll be successful. But.
It's interesting. I don't know if I'll watch it when it comes out. I'm only mildly entertained by Pirates of the Caribbean. I know you're a huge fan. I think it's a good movie. I also think it's overrated. I have the same feeling, and you're going to hate me for this, especially if Raider ever gets on. I have the same feeling towards Harry Potter. I think it's a really fun movie series. I enjoyed most of the books with Harry Potter.
I wish I had a button like on my keyboard that I could just tase you. Like you're sitting in one of those rigged up chairs.
I think they were good. I just don't think they were as good as everyone makes them out to be.
But did you read the books?
Huh?
Did you read the books?
I read like the first 4 or 5.
And?
Harry Potter books.
Still nothing? Man, what's wrong with you?
I mean, they're okay books. They're also written. They were written for children, and I read them as a child, and it was entertaining to little Shane. But like, Shane grew up. He reads better books now, like the Stormlight Archive, which we'll get into later.
Yeah. I will say,
really good.
Comparing those two isn't really fair.
Yeah, see, that's what I'm saying. If I'm only watching Harry Potter and I'm not thinking about any other movies or forms of media, yeah, my mind's going to be blown. It's awesome. It's amazing. But when I compare it to Star Wars, well, old Star Wars, there's no comparison. Same with Pirates of the Caribbean. Like, if I'm like, do I want to binge Pirates of the Caribbean or do I want to binge Star Wars up until, episode 6? I'm binging Star Wars.
I was saying, choose your words carefully there, guy.
There's no contest in my mind there. If I don't have the option to watch Star Wars, or I don't have the option to watch like some other movies that I find very enjoyable, I would enjoy binge watching Pirates, and I would enjoy binge watching Harry Potter. But there are other things I would like better. So that's just how I am. I don't know.
Nah, I get you there. All right, let's get to the meat of the episode. I think we're both pretty excited to talk about this. And let me start, I guess, by saying that now I am halfway through The Way of Kings. All right, so I'm at. I just finished part 2, which I think is about 430 pages in. Um, so spoiler alert, because there probably is going to be
Yeah.
some spoilers that we're going to talk about. And even I am not fully aware of every. Obviously, I'm in the first book of this particular series called Stormlight series. Now, there are several different series in this whole. The Cosmere is what Brandon Sanderson calls it, right? So I guess so we can keep it as spoiler free as possible. Not that I really care about spoiler free, but as I don't want to spoil any big things for me.
Yeah. So what I'll say is anybody reading this series for the first time, there will probably be some spoilers in here.
It does not detract from the enjoyment
No,
of the
it's
book.
so well
however. I
written
will
and
say
it's
that.
such a great story. It's
Yeah.
so good. But Jake, I do have to ask you, like, if you ask me questions, like how spoiler heavy do you like? Do you want me to answer questions, or do you want me to just be like, can't tell you?
I want if it's something kind of mundane or that has something to do with the overall Cosmere that I wouldn't understand otherwise, I want you to
Okay.
tell me. But if it has something to do with like a character's death, like if Dalinar bites the big one, like the
Okay.
2 chapters
So-
from now, like I don't want to know that.
So no big twisty things, but small minor stuff you're cool with.
Yeah, yeah. So
Okay.
I guess that's what I was. So let me start by like trying to, I guess, break down the Cosmere as it stands, how I understand it, and then you fill in the gaps. So
Okay.
at least some of the gaps that don't obviously give away big spoilers.
Yeah.
Now I want to start by saying these are very large books, and if you're not a great reader, they are available on audio books, so that's a great option. I'm not a huge book reader. I try to be, and I've been trying a lot more lately. Like I read a couple popular books last year. Like I read Where the Crawdads Sing, which is obviously not fantasy. It's like it was just a very popular book. Anybody who's into reading knows what that is. So I mean,
I don't.
I started kind of small. No, you probably would not like it. It's no, but it's like a smaller book.
I stick strictly to fantasy and lit RPGs. That's about
Yeah,
it.
yeah. No, but I try to like my wife has good like suggestions here and there. Like she gave me one called The Silent Patient, which was really good. It's kind of like a psychological thriller or whatever. This is very strictly fantasy, but it's very well done. In the fact that like, if you ever watch Game of Thrones, which is not a fair comparison, but as far as like the political intrigue, I think it's very similar in a lot of ways. And it kind of hits some of those same notes. So anybody who has been disappointed by Game of Thrones, I highly recommend checking these out. This is I wouldn't say it's a finished series, but it is a more put together series, and it definitely has that same political intrigue with the same, not the same fantasy because it is very different, but a definite structured fantasy and a very structured magic system, which is not called
Yeah.
magic. What do they call it?
And it's hard to explain. The easy way to say the easiest way to say like what their magic is, they call it investiture.
Investiture. That's what I was thinking of.
But
yeah.
that's like a very watered down explanation.
Yeah.
Investiture is like, man, how do I explain it without it sounding stupid? Not that it's a stupid thing, but I've got a smooth brain, so it's hard for me to explain things sometimes. But like, magic comes from like gods or Adonalsium, who is like or was the god.
There's rules for everything. It's not like
Yeah.
like we were talking about Harry Potter, right? You have magic and
you
there's
can't just
sorcerers
hold
that
a
fucking
wand
work.
and say
No.
Leviosa, and then nothing's gonna happen. You have to already, for some reason, every planet that you're on that has sentient life, they all have different rules. Their magic systems all work differently, but at the end of the day, it all boils down to investiture, which is essentially how much of a god's power has been invested into your physical form.
Right. Yeah, so it's very it's complicated in the fact that it takes a minute to really understand what's happening and what's going on, but once you really get into it and it gets you hooked, that everything kind of has a rhyme or reason. There's a yin and yang to everything.
Yep. It's interesting that you've already picked up on that. The whole yin and yang portion of it.
Yeah, which I just think is really cool. That's my biggest problem with fantasy books, and I have a hard time getting into it because it's not believable. It has a hard time really gripping me because it takes you out of it when you're just supposed to just give in, and I have a hard time doing that, just giving in and accepting it. This, you don't have to really give in because it more or less you can understand where he's coming from, why he's explaining it, and it makes sense in that world. You know?
There is a fine line between making things that are impossible to be realistic.
Yeah.
And I think Stormlight Archive, the Casimir, Brandon Sanderson does an amazing job that takes these concepts that we all know as living human beings are impossible to be real, but write it down and explain it in such a way that's like, man, if it was real, this makes sense.
Yeah, this is how it would be. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's start by saying this whole universe. Think of like the Marvel universe in a way. That's a terrible explanation, but
that's how I explained it to you. So
yeah. So this book series, along with the Mistborn series and several other, they're all part of the same universe. All right, it's not just a single standalone story. Right, it's all part of this Cosmere that Brandon Sanderson has created. Now, like we were just kind of talking about before, in the beginning, right, the Big Bang, there was what's called a divinity, a god of sorts, called, how do you pronounce it, Ananalcium or
Adenalcium. Like Aiden, like the character Aiden, Nalcium.
Okay, yeah, a lot of these things, again, are very hard to pronounce, so bear with us. Now, from what... Elvish. Yeah, so I will tell you, I did start listening to this podcast that kind of explains a lot of the mythology of Rashar and the Cosmere as a whole.
Now, I don't know what podcast you're listening to. Are they explaining factual stuff that's been confirmed by Brandon Sanderson?
Yes.
Or theories?
Yeah, no, they will give you their own theories or whatever, but they will even quote Brandon Sanderson in different especially like AMAs, like on Reddit, like that Brandon Sanderson does, like the Ask Me Anything, like he's released a lot of information in those, different interviews, and I didn't know this, but he's I don't know if he still is, but at least when book 2 was out, so this was like early 2000s, he was a professor at BYU.
Yep. I think he still is.
Is he still? Okay.
I think so.
Anyway, so it's important to point out that all these planets that are in this galaxy, right, especially Rashar or whatever, before the shattering, let's just call it, the Big Bang of this, the god Ananalcium or whatever he's called, there were still like civilizations on some of these planets. I imagine some of that gets a little spoiler. I don't really know yet because I'm not 100%.
So a lot of these other planets had life, but they didn't necessarily have humans.
Okay.
So, and that's why, like, on all of these different planets, they all have humans. Which, if like you're going to talk about a universe and sentient alien life in a universe, not all these living beings are going to look the same.
Right.
Right? They're going to be different because they didn't come from the same place. So, it leads one to think, oh, well, why are they all human looking or human, period? It's because, like, when these shards, like, where Adenalcium was, where he created and established life on that planet, he, much like a lot of modern religions, he created these beings in his own image. So these shards, when they go off to their own planets, they also created these beings in the image of Adenalcium. So, like, or in the image of Adenalcium's creations.
Right.
Which is why, like, on Roshar, you have the Man, it's been too long since I read this book. But the Parshmen, the Parshendi, they are clearly not human. They are natives to Roshar. The humans, you'll have to read on that.
Yeah.
And that's all I'll say there.
So how spoiler do you want to get with the world hopping?
That all depends on you.
Yeah, so I'll tell you mine.
I still have some lines crossed there because it gets real confusing. There are certain beings in this franchise that are labeled as world hoppers, and they have figured out how to go basically from one planet to another by jumping into I forget what it's called. What's that?
They're like pools.
Well, so the world where Shallan went to when she discovered that she had powers. Do you remember what they called that? I don't remember right now.
I haven't got to that point yet.
Yes, you have. If you got to the bridge, so has Shallan not been studying underneath
Yasna?
Yasna?
She has, and I believe I'm coming up to the point where she starts. I know that she discovers powers and all that shit, and whatever she gets a spren to and all that. Like
her and Yasna haven't split yet.
No.
Okay, I'm sorry then.
No, it's fun. No, I already knew that part. You're not spoiling anything for me.
Yeah, but
I just tell you, I haven't actually read that part.
Anyways, I can't think what it's called right now, but there's essentially a place where just like the soul exists, and that's
called
also
the cognitive realm.
Yeah, you're right, and that's where Spren exist in their true form.
Yep.
And so,
well, we'll get to that in a second. That gets confusing. So let's back up just for a quick recap. Where make it simple for the book series for the Cosmere. There's big god guy. He breaks apart. All these shards go to all these different planets, and each one of those shards control the what did you call the magic system?
The type of investiture that is present on that planet.
Yeah, so the type of investiture, or quotes, the magic, or whatever you want to call it, on each one of these planets is controlled by the shards that are on these planets that are pieces of Adonalsium.
Yeah. Do you know what like the shards are?
What they exactly are? I mean, they're like I don't know. What do you mean by that?
So, shards cannot exist without a host.
Right.
And so all of these shards, at least in the beginning, are the people who originally killed Adonalsium or Shattered.
Yeah. No, I knew that. Yeah, I didn't know if you were okay.
Yep. Yeah. So all these shards are and or were humans.
Yeah. And how? I keep jumping ahead of myself, but do we want to talk about the 17th shard?
That might be new territory for me.
Really? Okay, we'll get there eventually.
Is that what they refer to Hoyd as?
That's what they refer to Hoyd. Yeah, we'll get to him.
I always forget because I know there's a page called the 17th Shard. Yeah. And I know that Adonalsium was split into a specific number of shards. I knew it wasn't 17, and it my lines get crossed real easy because I'm smooth brain. So yeah, he split into 16 shards, right?
Yeah.
And then Hoyd, who was a part of that group, refused a shard, which kind of pissed all the dudes that did take a shard. It pissed them off because he kind of got these weird powers without having to take a shard. Part of the problem with taking a shard is it changes you. It changes you and it changes the shard. You become like a mix of each other. So, so it pissed a lot of the shards off. Although I do need to go back. Not all of the people who accepted a shard were human. At least one of them was a dragon.
Yeah.
So do you know who that is?
I don't know exactly who it is, but I do know that's who Hoyd is writing the letters to.
Yeah.
They're between.
It's because Hoyd and that shard, they didn't get along before they were shards, and I think he wants to make amends with that individual. Yeah. Because Hoyd's very much in it for himself with everything. Yeah. But he also wants to be a part of something. It's not made clear what he, even like in all the books and what a lot of people are talking about, it's not really been made clear what Hoyd's end goal is, at least
Yeah,
from
I
that
guess you
team.
don't. Yeah.
But so far, he very much cares about himself, but he also cares about the shards. Like, to say that he didn't get along with the shard that he's writing his letter to isn't to say that they weren't friends. Like, that whole
Right.
group, they were buddies that all unanimously decided that something about Aiden Elysium was bad. It hasn't really explained quite yet why, but for some reason, these 17 people felt very strongly that the god that is in control of their world did not need to exist anymore.
So, okay, let's go just back a little bit. We've kind of got the mythology out of the way, got all these worlds, have all these different aspects, right? And there is... So, Rashar, let's just focus on that, because that's where the Stormlight Archive takes place. Maybe eventually when I get to Mistborn, we can talk about that planet and whatever. So, basically, on Rashar, and within the galaxy, there are 3 planes of existence. There, if you think of like what the modern day like Christianity or whatever, you have, us right now, you have physical, and then you have what the Christians believe is like the spiritual, right? The heaven and hell, whatever. So in this series, there is something in the middle called the cognitive realm. So you have the physical realm, cognitive realm, and spiritual realm. And I do know some things I probably shouldn't, but what's interesting about the cognitive realm is that things don't always appear the same that they do in the physical realm. So like you said already, Spren appeared like their actual form. I believe shard blades, when they are like not in use, are in the cognitive realm, and then they are summoned to the physical realm after the 10 heartbeat thing and all that bullshit. A little complicated. I don't know. Maybe I'm a little off there, but
You're way off, but you're supposed to be way off.
really, okay.
Yeah, shard blades and shard plate are not what you think they are.
Well, I
At
do
all.
know that they are dead shard. They're not living shards.
They're dead sprint.
Is it dead sprint? So I thought that they were actual shards and that the honor blades were sprint. Or
Well,
Yeah.
so the spren are shards of honor.
yeah,
So yeah, they are shards, but they're not shards of they're not honor, they're spren.
because isn't Syl gonna be? I haven't got to the part yet, but isn't Syl gonna be Kaladin's spear or whatever the hell he wants it to be?
She becomes so once you've bonded to a spren, and that bond, and you've spoken the correct oath, this is the correct level of oaths, your spren can become more of a weapon. So most people, because of the whole Light Eyes thing, and thinking that Light Eyes need swords, that's why the vast majority and everything that you've seen so far has manifested as a sword. Because everybody back then thought swords meant that you were highborn or of a higher being. But a living spren can turn into whatever the person wants. And since Kaladin is comfortable fighting with a spear, spren turns into a spear. Or Syl turns into a spear. He does turn her into a sword on occasion. He even turns her into a shield once or twice. But for the most part,
cool.
she takes the form of a spear. And also, this is towards the end of the last book. That's what shard plate is also.
All right. So with the heralds, they basically are they actually human, or they're just beings? Well, I don't know if you want to call them human or whatever, just people.
They are humans that were changed by an oath.
Right. So these 10 heralds make an oath pact to basically save or protect Rashar from, I think they call it the desolation, right? And bring the void bringers and all this, end of days type shit. So every time this desolation or whatever would come about, the Voidbringers come about. These heralds would protect this planet, and they would kill off these Voidbringers, or whatever the case was, right? But the deal was with this oath pact that then they would have to basically go back to hell, if you want to call it that. It's not called hell.
Yeah, they call it something else, but essentially it's their version of hell.
Essentially their version of hell. And they get like tortured and torn apart for like thousands of years or whatever it is until the next time they're needed. And that is part of the pact.
They get tortured until they give up. Whenever they give up, that's what starts the next desolation.
Right, so like it goes longer and longer and longer.
Correct. They go to this versions of hell whenever they die. They just go to this version of hell, and that's where they stay tortured, and it holds back the next desolation.
Yeah.
At the beginning of this book, you see there's 8 of them or something like that.
No, or there's 10 total.
Yeah,
and there's only total. 9 still alive.
9 of them decide we're done being tortured, and we're going to set our blades down and walk away.
Yeah.
One of them decided, I'm not giving up. And so...
he did. He died during the combat, so he didn't have a choice in the matter.
So the...
And they abandoned him.
Back. Yep.
Yeah.
So essentially, how it worked out, these guys are on Roshar. A group of these guys, 10 of them, decide something has to keep this from happening again, so they make this oath. It gives them powers-esque, but when they die, they go to hell, and they are tortured until they can't handle it anymore, and whenever they give up, it releases, what's-his-face?
Odium?
Odium, there you go. So, after the first desolation, it was like a super long time till the next desolation. And then that happened, and it was still a long time, but not quite as long. And it got shorter and shorter and shorter because the guys, the 10, they remember all of this, right? And it gets to a point where they can't handle it anymore. So the last desolation, the first one of the dudes died. He happens to be the guy that's always held out the longest. He died, and then the rest of them, after defeating Odium, were like, we can't do this anymore. We're not going back. They lay their blades down, and they take off. So this dude, for the last, 1,000 years, maybe more?
Oh, yeah, it was the long
has been the only person in, I think they call it Raise.
It might be.
Yeah. He's in, I think, Raise, which is their version of hell, and he's been tortured for 1,000 years by... Why am I so bad with names?
Voidbringers?
No, by the evil shard.
Oh, Odium?
Yeah, he's been tortured by Odium for the last 1,000 years, and finally gave up.
I think it's like 4,500 years. Like, it's been a long time.
Yeah, it's been it was actually... the longest period of time ever, yeah. even between the first 2 desolations. So he finally gave up, and that's where all these series of events are starting to happen.
Yeah.
And Spren are reluctantly beginning to bond with humans again.
Yeah, because then after the heralds, you kind of have the step down, which is like their generals of sorts. Each herald had their own order called the Knights Radiant. And so each herald had like a specific order. I think one of them, I only know like really 2 of them that one's the Windrunners, right? And then one of them, that's like Kaladin's order eventually, right? I'm not supposed to know that, but one of them's the, God, what's that other one that Shallan's a part of?
I don't remember all the order names.
Yeah.
How it breaks down is there are, I don't know how many like specific abilities there are, but each order is really good at one ability, and they're kind of good at 2 other abilities. And so, and they all sort of overlap. So like the Windrunners are really good at a very specific certain type of investiture, and they're kind of good at 2 other types of investiture. Shallan, once she actually figures out what the hell she wants to do, she's really good at a specific type of investiture, and that overlaps. So, like, all of the orders overlap. Like, if you think of it as a circle, you know, you got the one thing that you're good at, this thing over here that you're kind of good at, this guy right next to you, that's what he's really good at, right? And so on and so forth. And so... It's complicated. It's weird.
It is. It's a very complicated universe that he has written, but it's addicting as hell to get into. It really is. Now, I know we've probably done like a shit job of explaining all this so it can make sense. However, yeah, right. But however, I think anybody who's like looking for a good fantasy series to get into should definitely jump into this. I think now, in particular, is a really good time because there's always, from what I've understood, just doing a little bit of research that I have, there's always been something in the works. They're trying to make a TV show. They're trying to make a movie or whatever it is. I hope that doesn't happen. Reading the books now, I hope it does not happen because I think they'll fucking ruin it. However,
because Brandon Sanderson's heading it up and he's not going to let somebody fuck his works up.
Oh, right. So what I was going to say, I do believe that it's going to happen eventually. So this is definitely one of those series I would recommend reading the books while you can before something like
I think
a multimedia comes out. You know what I mean?
I think so. Brandon Sanderson, and I saw this in an interview, he really, really wants to do a live action of Stormlight, which I think is a mistake.
I agree.
And even Brandon Sanderson has run into hurdles because, so the spread manifests in many, 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 many different ways. There are even scenes in the book where someone gets knocked on the head so hard and what do they call it, dizzy spren or whatever, float around his head in stars like Looney Tunes. Yeah. And so Brandon Sanderson is I want that to be in the movie, but I need to figure out a way to make it not look like Looney Tunes.
Cartoony?
Yeah. So I really feel like the Stormlight Archive should be animated. Whether they do a movie or a series, it should be animated because it'll translate 100%. Better. Once you read Mistborn, now that would be a fantastic live action.
Regardless of which ones you should read first or last or what you should do in order or whatever, I don't know that it matters that much. I'm having a hell of a time with Stormlight Archive so far.
Yeah.
I can't wait to get to Mistborn.
So my unprofessional opinion, as far as the reading order goes, I think you should start with the first trilogy of Stormlight because it is a big dip. You're not just getting your toe wet, you're getting fully submerged, but that really sort of gets you in the right mindset. And it's the best, right?
Yeah.
Not even just the first
trilogy. It's epic fantasy, right? It's a big
the whole
flagship.
Stormlight series. Excuse me, I'm sorry. The whole Stormlight series, which a new one is about to come out, in a couple months or something like that. Also, he's working on Dragonsteel. That's also coming out later this year. Dragonsteel takes place on the original planet where all this crap started, by the way. But Stormlight, the first trilogy, just really brings you in it. Mistborn is great. It took me a bit to get into it. Because it's just not as fleshed out, I feel like. But chronologically, if we want to talk that, you got Mistborn, Era 1, most of what happens in Stormlight, and then Mistborn Era 2. There's a 100-year gap between Era 1 and Era 2. But I think you should do first Stormlight trilogy, first Mistborn trilogy, and at that point, I don't think it really matters because now you're aware of after the first trilogies of both, you basically understand for the most part how the Cosmere works. You understand a lot of the secrets that you weren't aware of before, and you can start picking up on things, and it really doesn't matter where you read, because once you read this and then you read that, you're like, oh, those things are actually connected. Honestly, what you really should do, read the first trilogy of Stormlight, read the first trilogy of Mistborn, reread both those trilogies in that same order, and then move on. Because you're going to start realizing, like, you're going to start noticing world hoppers, you're going to start noticing connecting themes that are going on within the Cosmere outside of the purview of the main story arcs. You're going to start seeing all of these different crazy things, and everything is going to start making more sense. Because there's so much that's going on. There's been a lot of spoilers that we've talked about already, but there's so much going on that...
It's really hard to keep up with, but it's so entertaining that it's like...
Well, it's very Game of Thronesy in that aspect, where there's so many different people to follow and events taking place simultaneously, and obviously at different times. Like, it's just crazy. And once you realize, like, some of these people that have been around for a long time, and other people who you think are big players, but really they're as small fish as you can imagine, it's crazy.
Well, honestly, what the cool thing is, and what he does really cool with the cognitive realm, which I think I was going to explain earlier, and I think I just got sidetracked, but
yeah.
So this cognitive realm that like certain people can travel to, think of it as like space in between planets like doesn't exist in this cognitive realm. Like anything that someone can imagine, like if you're in your house right now, you have a chair, your table, your house, whatever, that would be in the cognitive realm. But anything that's just blank air, that doesn't mean anything, is not there. Right? So like you can go from this planet of Rashar, and what would be like if you had to take a fucking spaceship or something and go like how many light years to our planet is like a day's walk or something, or rather, is kind of how it's explained, to get to this other planet.
But the opposite is also true.
What do you mean
So
by
something that could be a day's walk could also take many, many, many days to get there. The cognitive realm is really twisted.
It's very...
Like,
it's
time and space is sort of twisted there, but everything that exists in the cognitive realm exists in the minds of people.
Yep.
So
that's what's hard to explain about it. And
it's really hard, and the book does a really good job explaining it in a way that makes all sense and also no sense at the same time.
Yeah.
You'll find that, and you haven't been to the cognitive realm yet,
no.
Correct, Jake? But like, so you'll find that physical items in the cognitive realm take up this space of like a bead.
Yeah.
And so like everything in the cognitive realm is flip-flop. So like the oceans and bodies of water, they're all solid land. And the oceans in the cognitive realm are all beads that are things that humans cognitively perceive in the real world. So you can grab a handful of beads out of the ocean, and certain people invested with Stormlight can take that bead and manifest its physical form in the cognitive realm and turn that bead into what it is physically. So it's really cool. It's really weird. It's just interesting how it all works. But like it also, all of the cognitive realm is one realm.
Yeah.
So like the cognitive realm of Roshar is interconnected to, or is the same place as, the cognitive realm of where Mistborn takes place and all of these other places. It's like purgatory, but like also not nothingness. It's everything.
Yeah. It's very wild. I'm excited to keep reading and keep getting into it and learning more or whatever. I'm sure we'll do another one of these kind of book-heavy episodes once I get finished with this book or whatever the case is, you know. So.
Honestly, I think what we should do, it's a little late for it now, but every time you complete a part of a book, so you'll have like part 1, part 2, part 3, whatever, we should do an episode dedicated on that part.
I'm down.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun to talk about because it's easier to like kind of work things out when you do talk about it. It's definitely one of those books that you do have to almost like have a conversation about it for it to make sense. Sometimes.
Well,
like,
and it's interesting because like I've done like a little bit of research, right? But I haven't done any, like, I don't watch a whole bunch of podcasts. I might watch a 5 or 10 minute clip here and there. And I'll do, like, minimal research to figure out things that I don't know. But I don't actually watch all of this stuff about it like you do. So there is probably a lot of things that you know that I don't, even at this point. But at the same time, because I've read so many books,
Words.
yeah, words and things and stuff. Because I've read so many books, there's also a lot of stuff that I do know and things that make sense to me that right now you might think makes sense, and then you're going to realize that you've been wrong this whole time.
Well, it's true because one of the main podcasts I'm listening to, which they seem to have a lot of information about Brandon Sanderson himself, and then these books that he's written. I started like when they started the podcast, which was like 2000. I don't even know. It was like 2010 or something like that, where like most of these books that are out now weren't even out yet, so they didn't even have the information for it all to make sense yet. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it'll be interesting to see if I keep listening to that and just learn things here and there, and then I don't know. It's just it is a really good series. I'm glad you turned me on to it because I've kind of been needing something that kind of scratched that itch for like a Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings type thing, because there's not really many out there right now that are like that.
Well, I mean, there other than right now, other than Stormlight, there isn't.
No, there's not. I mean,
not that I know of. As far as like high fantasy that is written in a unique way that makes a lot of entertaining sense.
Yeah. Which I guess that brings us around to, I don't know how entertaining this episode was, but it was entertaining for us to talk about. So if you've stuck with us this far, we appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, I know that the book, it listening to it, I'm sure seems a lot more complicated than maybe it is once you start understanding it. But even just trying to explain some of it sounds wild, and I recognize that. But anybody looking for a good book series to get into should really consider picking up one of Brandon Sanderson's books, either Stormlight Archive, whether you start there, or with Mistborn, or he has a couple standalone like novels or novellas, whatever you want to call them, that are still a part of this whole Cosmere. So definitely check them out if you can. You got anything else you want to add?
Not really. I think that was pretty good. I definitely want to talk about it more as you read more. I will say I'll piggyback off of you a little bit with honestly, we've talked about when and what you should read, but if any of these concepts that we have very poorly explained pique your interest at all, don't worry about the reading order. If you find a book at the library and it's within the Stormlight Archive, grab it and read it. You know, you might start in the middle of a series, or it might be one of the standalone books, but it's you're gonna have a good time. And one of the good things about the way that he writes is he's constantly world building in all of his books. So
that's the big difference between this series and a lot of others, is that the world is so fleshed out that you can really
it's always growing. But
I think this is something we didn't talk about, which I thought was a really cool aspect of this, is that on Rashar, at some point in their past, the church had actually taken over, or tried to take over, and it had failed. So there's just all this history of shit that you just don't get in any other fantasy stories that I can think of.
And like there's repeating, and that's why I said it's okay to start in the middle of a series, because there's repeating themes, and different characters on different situations will refer back to that. So like if you read Stormlight Book 2 first, there will be some build-up that you missed out from the first one that'll help you invest more into some of the characters, but at the same time, you're not going to be left in the dark, because the world's constantly growing and building, and they're constantly referring to where they've came from. So, like, you can start in the middle and still get a gist of what's going on and continue on and be entertained. So don't feel like, oh, my library only has Mistborn 4. I can't read this yet because I didn't read the first 3. Get it and read it, you know? Eventually you'll get the other ones. Or if you've got any audiobook and or digital book purchasing app, like, they're, other than Amazon, Brandon Sanderson's kind of got beef with them a little bit. So
Yeah, that's what I hear.
if you try to do audiobook, you'll get some of his books, a lot of the earlier ones, but you're not going to get any of the newer books. But Google Play's got all of the newer books. I think Sound Booth Theater's got some of them. There's a few other apps that are like audiobooks that are for people that have a hard time reading that he's trying to boost those companies as well. I don't remember what they're all called, but like you can get most of his stuff on almost everything. I think his stuff, a lot of his stuff is on Spotify as well. So
yeah, I think so. I think I came across a couple of them when I was just looking in Spotify for podcasts
like,
and stuff.
Yeah, don't be deterred if you can't get a hold of like the first books. Just get into it, and then when you can get a hold of those older books, you know, read those and give it a shot.
Yeah. Hell yeah, man. Well, I appreciate it. I owe the getting into this book series and all that to you for sure. So, alrighty.
You're welcome.
Well, I think that's it for us. Yeah, that's it for us. We're gone like, I don't know, hour and 40 minutes at this point. So I'm sure some of that will be cut down.
An hour and 20, but I'm sure you're going to cut a lot of that out. There was some pauses where we had to look stuff up, so we'll be all right.
Right. All right, guys. Well, for 3PN, I'm Jake.
And I am Shane.
Check us out at our email. It is pixelsplotsandparenting@gmail.com. We're on Facebook, Spotify, YouTube. Any feedback, let us know what you think. If you're going to be picking up the book, great. If you have any other recommendations, book recommendations, let us know.
For those that want more light, humored fantasy and are into the lit RPG genre, do Dungeon Crawler Carl. That's the next series I'm going to try real hard to get Jake into. It's super fun and entertaining. Not quite as complicated as Stormlight, but it's really fun.
Yeah, mate, we'll see. All right, man. It's always been a pleasure doing this with you. We'll see you again maybe next week or the week after.
Hopefully. See ya.
All right. See you.